So why can't they just quit? Many of us wonder, why can't they just quit? Why can't they just stop using opioids? I'm going to walk you through this in a way I hope not only helps you understand, but also helps you explain it to others. Something you can draw out on the back of an envelope or a napkin when you're talking with friends or family, and you need to explain this. So you can see here, on the left-hand side, this is how a person feels. It goes from euphoric or high to happy, okay, sad, and down to dysphoric or bad. Then, along the bottom, this is as time goes by. So you, me, all of us have this normal variation in mood, unless we have something else going on, maybe some depression or something, and we're more down here, for example. But for many people, this is your normal mood variation. We come back to baseline, and we're generally feeling okay. So what happens when someone uses opioids, such as heroin or prescription opioids like OxyContin? For many of us, say 9 out of 10, our brains are not susceptible to the chronic brain disease of addiction or being altered by substances, which initially cause euphoria. Or maybe we're partially susceptible. And then they use a substance, they feel euphoric or get high, and then afterward overshoots just a little bit. Maybe that's when someone feels hungover or a little bad, but then they just get back to baseline. The next time, when they use again, they feel euphoric, have that little dip, and then get back to baseline. They're able to control their use and choose to use temporarily to feel euphoric. They're not driven to use. They have the freedom to choose when to use, or, learning from past consequences of using, perhaps choosing not to use again at all. Again, this is the case for the majority of people whose brains are not susceptible to addiction. And this is what makes it so hard for people to understand why others, whose brains are susceptible, are unable to control their use or quit. Maybe if their brain is partially susceptible to addiction, if they use often enough, maybe they'll move into the chronic disease of addiction as well. Now let's look at somebody who actually has a brain that is susceptible to this chronic disease. That 1 out of 10 people with brains very susceptible to being changed by substances which initially bring euphoria. For them, they use, and maybe the first time they get back near baseline, but often not. Then they'll use again, and their brain begins to change. The brain changes cause worsening in how the person feels, physically and emotionally. And the person starts using more to counter those bad feelings. But this just worsens the brain changes further, so the person ends up feeling awful, sick, both physically and emotionally, all of the time. So bad that they're unable to function normally in their daily life, except when the substance is present in their body, which gives them reliable, rapid, much-needed relief. Makes you feel okay for a few hours, feel okay and maybe function okay and feel normal. Avoiding the pain is an extremely strong and basic biological drive, similar to hunger or thirst. Using to avoid the otherwise constant physical and emotional pain becomes an increasingly compulsive drive, meaning the person can no longer control it. So once the brain is fully transitioned to addiction, the person is no longer choosing to use in order to feel good. Rather, increasingly, is compulsively driven to use, to avoid pain and misery, and to be able to feel and function normally. The role of medications like methadone and buprenorphine or Suboxone to treat opioid use disorder addiction is used to fill this compulsive biological need so the person can start making healthy choices that can very gradually shift brain functioning back in a healthy direction. The main takeaway here is that the reason they can't just quit is because their brains have changed and their brains are driving them to use opioids so they can feel okay and function, just like you and I would if we were susceptible to opioid addiction.